Lord. Wow. Week made strong. Thank you guys. We are learning and growing, and we are so blessed. Thank you. Wow. That was, Joanna's sick. There's a few other people that are sick too, and so these guys so amazingly stepped up and said, you know what, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna do worship on our own. And that was amazing, and I think Joanne would be incredibly proud. Be careful, we might encourage her to be sick more often, because that was amazing. So if you were here a few weeks ago, John preached a sermon titled Faithfulness from Joshua 6. And if you missed it, it's on YouTube, you can check it out. We record all our sermons, that's my favorite. As John was reading along in Joshua 6, it's a story about Joshua's army marching around this fortified city of Jericho until the walls tumbled down, and John was reading through, and verse 17 just totally jumped out at me. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies that we sent. Only Rahab the prostitute. Like, that's her name. And actually, it's a thing. I found it again in Hebrews 11:31. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. That's a fascinating passage, because Rahab the prostitute is listed in a long parade of Bible celebrities. Honorable, noble, great men and women of the Bible, like Abraham, Abel, Moses, Joshua, Jacob, and the list ends with Rahab the prostitute. I think as a high school girl, probably there's children in the room. I was not expecting that. Probably slut is the worst thing you can be called in high school as a girl. Everyone shuns her, whispers behind her back. I actually moved to Ottawa in grade 10, towards the end of the year, which totally sucks, let me tell you. If you never moved in the middle of high school, you were saved some real trauma. I'm sure you have your own, though. Two girls that befriended me at the very beginning. And it wasn't very long before people started telling me, they're the sluts. You shouldn't hang out with them. You shouldn't be with them. It's not the same for guys. It's a total double standard. Thankfully, though, God has no such double standard. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, it says in Romans 3:23. All have sinned. And when the Bible refers to Rahab the prostitute, it's not judgment. It's not condemnation. That's another amazing quality about God. He knows us. He knew exactly who I would be. He knew exactly what I would do. And he sent his son to die on the cross for me, even before I made every bad decision I ever made, and I made a lot. So for you, for me, and for Rahab the prostitute, even though Jesus came after, but that's not. So we meet Rahab in Joshua 2. The Israelites are God's chosen people, and they're returning to the promised land. God had promised them. They escaped slavery, and they're almost there. They're so close. I think it's like the entry point into the promised land is this fortified city called Jericho, which kind of cool, I found out. Actually wasn't a huge city. The people actually lived spread out, but they had these fortified cities with massive walls, and in wartime, the people that lived all across the countryside would come and all squish into this fortified city. Kind of like a big sleepover, I guess? I don't know. So we're going to read in Joshua 2, verse 1. Joshua, the son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go and look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab: "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." She's the harlot. Everyone sees who goes in and out of her house, and they're all whispering behind her back. Did you see who went into Rahab's house today? Those guys were foreigners. They're Israelites. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, though. You might catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. We just make a little note there that not only was she a harlot, she lied. Verse 8, before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, fallen on our whole city, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed," which is an amazing feat, because those guys might have weird names, but you're not going to make fun of them, because they were probably over 12 feet tall. They're giants, and one of them ruled over 60 cities of giants. There's actually, in the Middle East, they found actual cities with 18-foot ceilings. They really were giants, and the Israelites had defeated them. All these cities, all these amazing things that had happened. Rahab was hearing these stories. I imagine probably a lot of the stories came from the men who came to visit her in secret. When we heard of it, she said in verse 11, "Our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven, above and on earth below." So these guys came to scope it out, see what's going on, what kind of, military intelligence does Jericho have? How hard is this going to be? How many men do they actually have ready to fight? What kind of weapons do they have? What kind of tools? And what they get is the word of one woman who says, "I heard about you guys. I know who you are. My entire city is terrified. Everyone's courage has failed. I've heard about your God, and I believe that he is going to do what he says he's going to do. And I believe that he is the one true God." And she makes a decision that she is going to risk her life to help them. Rahab is a woman who's likely had a very hard life. You don't grow up as a little girl thinking, "I think I will become a prostitute." It's actually a series of traumatic life events that lead you to a desperate, desperate place where you allow yourself to be used, abused, and yet here we have Rahab making a life-altering, proactive decision. It's an assertive move on her part. This woman is not a victim. She is a woman of action. In verse 12, she says, "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my mother and father, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives." The men assured her, "If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land." So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived on was part of the city wall. And she said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way." And the men said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us, unless when we enter the land, you have tied the scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. If any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in your house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear." "Agreed," she replied, "let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. Rahab the prostitute has a faith in God just from hearing these stories, and it's followed by an obedience that saves her life and the life of her entire family. Here at UCC, we have a class called Life Lab, and anyone who's been through that class has heard the concept that our thoughts are actually what lead us to action. The point of the class is kind of to get over those life patterns that keep tripping us up, we keep stumbling over. And Rahab, she started off by hearing stories, and she heard about Yahweh, she heard about Jehovah, the God of the Israelites, the sworn enemy of her people, the Canaanites. And so when the two spies show up, she has to make a decision. And her decision changes the life of her entire family. Our thinking is actually nothing without action. We spin our tires over and over and over, and either our actions are intentional or unintentional. But our thinking doesn't change anything if we don't actually implement steps to change anything. And I thought of a little example. There's probably many more examples in our lives because we lived in 13 years of addiction. So that's a whole lot of non-action, let me tell you. That's a whole lot of, wow, this really sucks, I should really do something about it, and not doing anything. But several years into sobriety and into our new lives, things are, starting to turn around, things are getting good. But John and I, we've done a lot of stuff, marriage stuff and counseling stuff and lots of stuff. But one of the main things that I can remember is actually thinking at one point, we're serving God, we're serving in a church, we're volunteering different places, and I remember thinking, I really want to be debt-free. Like, I feel like God has, told us that we should be debt-free, and we didn't have credit cards for the longest time. We had a really small mortgage, we stayed in our small house, purposely thinking, we want to eventually be debt-free. But that was the extent of it. And we thought about money all the time, probably every 2 weeks. Hey, wow, where did all the money go? I don't know, where did you spend the money? What do we do with all our money? Why don't we have any money? It was seriously nonstop. And if John wanted to pick a fight with me, that's literally all he had to do is just mention money, and I would literally go berserk. We had this amazing opportunity to be part of a group of people, and we got to do learning classes, and they did a financial fitness class with us. It was actually not just a class, it was a few days, and it was interesting and kind of intense, and they gave us material to take home, and it was fascinating. I was like, wow, this budgeting thing, this is kind of cool, wow. Never thought about that before. I mean, I thought about it, but it was beyond me. And so I had all this material, and they said to us, we will give you a free class, a free one-on-one. You want to do this? Come and see us, and we will sit down with you, and you bring all your numbers, and we'll work out a budget for you and help you get through all your stuff. Great. That sounds great. I'll think about that for a year and a half and keep fighting with my husband on a regular basis about money. It was loopy until one day we had a fight again. And I said, that's enough. And I grabbed that stupid binder off the shelf, and I took it downstairs to the dining room table. I slammed it on the table. I opened it up. I said, sit down. Probably not quite like that, but I was probably crying. Sit down. We need to talk about this. I'm so tired of this. And so we did. We looked through the papers. Oh, okay. I called the guy and said, can we have an appointment? He said, sure. And I mean, it wasn't super easy, but we actually implemented a budget. And it's hard at first. We live off cash, but that fighting pattern that we had honestly has dissipated. It was not terribly long before we really seriously felt like we weren't like trying to figure out where our money went, but we were telling our money where to go. And I was like, we were like the bosses of our house all of a sudden. And we were a team, and we knew like, okay, this is the plan. And the coolest thing about it is that the choices that we made 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, as we started getting, along the path of life, we never would have thought that maybe one day we'd want to, plant a church and have the financial freedom for John to be able to quit his job and, oh wow, let's try this thing. We didn't see that coming. We didn't know what would be on the other hand, but we took action in obedience and implemented something that we'd been thinking about, and it changed everything for us. Freedom doesn't just happen without action. And I think that Rahab heard the stories and saw freedom from her life of prostitution. She believed. I just kind of picture, though, her trying to convince her family, hey guys, so this city's going to be destroyed because there's this great big God and all these people that serve him, and so you need to come hang out at my house. All of you, come hang out at my house. And they're like, yeah, your house is on the outside of the wall, and everyone talks about you, and that's not really the cool place for us to go hang out. You've really let us down many times over the years. Why should we listen to you? I can just picture how that conversation goes. It's a little bit hard to talk and change people's perception of you and have them believe something that you believe until you start putting action behind your words. And actually, I think that's a telling, because it's not an easy thing to live our lives as a Christian when everyone around us is totally not interested. Some of us live in really hard places. I know, in this church especially. There's some people here that live in hard places. And when you take a stand, it's really hard. And I want you to know that we know that, and we see that, and we want to be here for you. That's one of the joys of being a church, being a family, to support each other. And I can't live what you live, but I do believe that God wants to bring us strength in community. Don't go off your notes, John said. It really isn't an easy thing. To stand up for what we believe in is very hard. But actually, if being a Christian if it's like not real in the end, sometimes I think about that. Like, what if it's not real? What if God, what if that book isn't real? I think it actually won't even matter. Like, if God isn't real, then actually none of us will matter, but all of us will have gotten to have great community and will have lived the best lives that we can, and really it won't matter in the end. But if God is real, it really does matter. And so that really hard stand that we take, all the hard stuff that we go through, is worth it in the end. It's worth it. So Joshua 6, verse 1 said, "Now Jericho was tightly closed because the Israelites, they knew. They had heard all the same things that Rahab heard. They could have made the same decision as Rahab if they had said, no, Rahab, like, us too, me too, I believe that if the spies told her, all who are in your house will be saved. But all those other people, they didn't make that choice. The Jericho was tightly closed because of the Israelites, and no one went in or out. The Israelites marched around the city walls once a day for 6 days, blowing trumpets, kind of crazy. And Rahab and all her family are in her house on the city wall, watching them go by. Oh, there they go again, blowing the trumpets. They said we're going to be okay. You think we're going to be okay? I think we're going to be okay. There's a scarlet cord, like there's a red string hanging out my window. I'm sure we're going to be fine. That's protection. And on the 7th day, the army marched around the city 7 times, blowing trumpets, and the walls fell down. And I just picture Rahab's house on the wall standing, and all the other walls fell down. I'm not exactly sure that she thought that's how the whole thing was going to go down, as everything around her collapses, and the trumpets are blowing, and the men start running into the city, and her and her family are going, this is really happening. Joshua 6:25. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her. Because she hid the men, Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lived among the Israelites to this day. Rahab the prostitute and all of her family were literally welcomed into God's family, into the family of the Israelites. And that's where they lived now. They were fully welcomed into God's family, to be with the chosen people. And so I think that when scripture is referring to Rahab the prostitute, I think God really wants us to see his mercy and his grace. I think we're really quick to try to distance ourselves sometimes from our past. No, it's all good. No. I got God, I'm good. Jesus died, I'm forgiven, I'm gonna believe, and that's all gone. But I think that scripture is giving me the sense that she owned her sin, that she repented of her sin. I'm sure she did not continue to live as a prostitute among the Israelites. But she was who she was. She was new, like she was changed. Now she's got a whole different life. She's completely different. Her family, I'm sure, felt like entirely different about her. And now she gets to go live in this promised land. But we're not defined by our sin. We're not defined by that. We're not defined by those labels. It's still a part of who I was. And I think that the more I embrace the reality of who I was and what I did, like the bigger Jesus seems. It's a great, big, amazing thing that God did in forgiving me for what I did in my life. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. If you don't know my story, you're welcome to ask me. I'm happy to tell anyone, because I've been forgiven. And I feel like the more I embrace my sin, the more I embrace my need for Jesus. And I can't walk around comparing myself to others. I mean, it's kind of easy in life, right? We can walk down the street and think, well, at least I'm not like that guy, or at least I'm not like her. But that is so not what God intended. He said, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We all need his grace and his mercy. In James 2:24 and 25, Rahab comes up again. So you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Rahab the prostitute was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. Faith is dead without good works. And so my encouragement to you, for those who've just been thinking, maybe God's real, I don't know, I think maybe, I would encourage you to investigate. I would encourage you, do some research, talk to some people, read some books, look into it. Don't just sit in those thoughts. That does nothing. Like, prove it right or prove it wrong, really, is what it comes down to. Take a look for yourself. But there's some of us who know that God is real. Like, we know. I actually have a moment that I'm not proud of, in a place that I never should have been, on substances I should not have been using, having a conversation about how I believed that God was real and one day I would serve him. And one day I would live my life for him, but for right now, this is good. I'm cool with this. And I went on from that day. I can picture so vividly the emotion of that day, of just knowing that I was in this deep, dark, dark, dark place. But there's a God, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And I went on to make some more horrible, painful decisions in my life after that moment. So for some of us who know God is real, we need to take that next step of action. We need to examine our lives and take a look at it. Does our belief in God actually change who we are? Does it change how we live our life? Is it changing my day-to-day? At work, would people be like, oh wow, there's something about her. It's really interesting. Like, remember all that stuff that she went through? And wow, I don't know how she got through all that, but boy, she seemed really at peace. What is that about? Do I live my life for myself? Or do I live my life for God and for others? And I think that God looked at Rahab and said, you know what? Like, these people, I want to do something for them. The people that changed, that altered their lives. I want to do something. I want to just cleanse them. And he did the most amazing thing that he could possibly think of. And he came to earth and he walked on earth as a man, lived among us, and then died for us, so that it would be finished, so that it would be over. That we could say, yes, Jesus, I believe in you. Take my life. Please free me from this horrible, horrible cycle that I've been living on. And don't look around and say, well, mine's not as bad as that, and da, 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 da. No, it's not about that. It's really not about that. Either your life is full of joy and peace and love and patience and fun, or it's not. And if it's not, you need to ask yourself why. Because even if you think you're a Christian, if that's not your life, ask him why. Ask God to hold up a mirror for you. God, I want to see. Please show me. Where are the walls that need to come down? The walls just need to come down. So God, I want to thank you. I thank you for a life transformed. I thank you for so many lives transformed in this room. I remember the desperation. I remember the pain. And God, it's incredible. It's incredible to me that you care about me. It's incredible to me that I matter. That each and every person in this room matters so much to you, God. So God, I pray for motivation to action for everyone in this community. Those who are sitting back and just not sure, Lord, would you just show them that they are welcome into your family, and show them the next steps they need to take, God. Thank you that you bring freedom. We just have to reach out and take it. Amen.